For the recording, my name is Jeff Wakeman. I am the Director of Student Development at Stockton University. And I welcome you all to today's presentation, the NASPA Campus Safety and Violence Prevention Knowledge Community, called Protest Demonstrations and the First Amendment on Campus, How to Prepare and How to Respond. I want to tell you that today's discussion is adopted from our Stockton University's Demonstration Action Response Team training and a lecture I do for undergrads on the First Amendment called from a class, Stockton in Higher Education. So there's some jokes and some basic stuff which we as campus professionals may be fully aware of, but you never know who's talking about these things for the first time. So I didn't want to leave anything out, even though it might be a little bit more basic than we're used to. So I'm going to begin by saying, a couple of caveats. I am not a lawyer. I mentioned I'm the Director of Student Development. I have been doing this work in First Amendment and free speech and making sure student voice is heard for my entire career. But this is law stuff, and some reductions have been made to make it easy for people to understand. So if you are a lawyer in the audience and you're like, it's kind of only sort of, basic or the generalities, we're talking in generalities today. I also want to mention that much of this information is from the ACLU and FIRE.org. If you have never worked with the Foundation for Individual Rights and Education, please check them out. They are free speech absolutists. They are the torchbearer for everything to be free as possible. But they are the organization that is focusing really on campus free speech. So much of their information is pretty important. They have a lot of free guides and things. So you might want to check them out. But like I said, both of those organizations are absolutists. And then the other thing I want to say is this is evolving. The Roberts Court and the current generation of students are requiring more safety. They're asking for more protections. The Roberts Court, I probably don't have to tell you that the current Supreme Court is making decisions and overturning things that have been previously considered untouchable. There is a case, today is September 21st, 2023, because it's being recorded. There is a case that is going to be heard in the next session of the Supreme Court called Doe versus McKesson. It specifically has to do with lawsuits when violence happens during demonstrations, and can you sue the organizer of the demonstration for a violence that happens? This will be very important for college campuses because a lot of times we are the person who sanctions or agrees or can be seen as a sponsor of a demonstration. So watch the courts and just, there it is. Know that we're being a little reductive here. We're also getting some information from some absolutists. So we're all college educated. I don't have to read to you my slides, but I will read this one. Many people think they know it's in the First Amendment, but they probably haven't read it in a while. So we're going to start with the 45 words. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people to peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. And the reason I put that on the screen is lawyers and courts will continue to argue for years and years and years about every single comma and semicolon and what those things mean. And there are lots of things that people think are there that isn't there. Freedom of versus freedom for religion. There's the words matter, and the words will be debated. And that's why I put it up there, but you can all Google it yourself later, and I promise I won't read you anything else. So many of the things that people think are in the First Amendment, but really aren't once we read those 45 words, are these things. You may have heard about freedom of expression. The word expression is not there. Freedom of exercise of religion. Maybe not. The Establishment Clause, freedom of assembly, freedom to redress the government. So these are things that are related rights. So those 45 words have turned into making sure that everyone is free to express themselves and everyone is free to express and exercise their religion. But if you go back, it doesn't say that you can freely express your religion. It just says your freedoms, the United States of America will not have a religion. So that's again, and then freedom of assembly. It never says that there's freedom of assembly. It says freedom to assemble to redress the government. So again, it will be argued about how these things work. And so these related rights are definitely not as absolute and to be discussed. So, and then the other half of that is that it's not absolute. Not all speech is free. And we know this. We've all heard about, yelling fire in a crowded theater. So the way that the courts have defined the speech that is not free is this bulleted list here. So incitement, something that creates a mob, defamation, that falls into two categories, libel or slander, fraud. You can't lie to create a breaking of a law, obscenity. And obscenity is not just words. Miller versus California and Cohen versus California are two different cases. One of them is about printed material and one of them is about presented material. Child pornography, don't need to go into that. Fighting words, which are defined as insults enough that will provoke a physical fight. So that doesn't include making someone feel unsafe or a threat, because threats are a specific one down the bottom there, personalized threats of illegal conduct. So a threat can't be for something that is legal. I'm going to sue you is not a threat that is protected, because it's not illegal to sue somebody. So threats, personalized threats of illegal conduct. These things are being hotly debated in all of the media right now, so we probably don't need to get into that. But if you've never heard about incitement or defamation or fraud, turn on any news source. It's literally being hotly debated right now with our former president. So yeah, we're going to keep going. And I should have mentioned, we are a state university. Stockton University is a state university. I know Rowan, I see some Rowan friends around the block here, also a state university. State or private university matters a lot in what it is that you can do to restrict speech on campus. And the words that get thrown out about a lot when we're talking about what the government can or can't do to restrict speech comes down to the thoughts of time, space, and manner. And I'm just going to click in here so everybody can read ahead. Oops, too far. So everyone can read ahead. But government-owned space, including a state university, is the place where free speech has to be. If you're a private university and you gave free speech caveats in your student handbook or in your organization, then this matters for you too. If you're a private university, some other things can happen. But anyway, so government-owned space like a town or a park is the freest space. They talk about traditional public forums in the courts and also limited public forums and non-public forums. So the best thing to do is to ask yourself around the university, if someone asked, where do people speak their voice? Where do people exercise their First Amendment right on campus? If the answer is the quad, the steps of the campus center, that's going to be the traditional public forums, the traditional space where people speak their mind. Where can someone do some speaking out, but it needs to be more careful? This is also to be asked at your university, and this might be the classrooms. A space you need to reserve, like a meeting room. And then where would you not be able to speak my mind? Well, someone can't come into my office and say mean, nasty things to me. I can ask them to leave, because this is not a public forum, my office. The president's office, it could be debated, is that a more public space because that's a more public figure? But all to be debated. But this is important because, like I mentioned, if you're a state university, you are the government. You are the government of your students. So the campus is the town, and you need to make those definitions based on what towns use as their definitions. So how can we respond? This goes back to time, space, and manner. Your campus can place rules about time, space, and manners. Your campus can restrict speech. The university can close. You can have quiet hours in a residence hall. You can say that a classroom during this time period is reserved for this class and this class only. You can say things about the manner of the way that people will get their free speech out. We have, you can't use amplified sound where it will disturb a classroom. That's manner. You can shout outside a classroom, but you can't bring in a microphone. As long as these rules are set up and in place, these are all things that you can do on your campus to make sure the business of the college continues to progress. So this is why if you're going to have demonstrations on your campus, it is always better to plan and have these things thought out. All right. So go back to your campus and say, what are the rules you have in place? What are the things that are barriers all the time? What are the things that are allowed all the time? If you have that rule set on your campus and you are objectively enforcing them, meaning that everybody gets enforced the same way, you definitely have the ability to control some situations. Not that we want to control all situations, but that's the important part. You have to use these rules for everyone. So here is some of the Stockton's policies, and I put this up here because I want you to see what we have put in place, because you might have in place also. University property must be submitted to the Office of Campus Center Operations 4 weeks prior. University will schedule the university space. Does that mean that someone can't speak in a public space? No. What it means is if someone is scheduled there, that is the space, is what use at the time. Literature distribution, we have litter problems here. We're in a forest. So we have literature distribution rules. Must conform with the posting policies. You have to get things stamped to go in the residence halls. There's all kinds of things like that. Chalking rules. We have chalking rules where you can and can't chalk. Near a doorway is a danger, so we don't let anybody chalk near a doorway. You can't obstruct pedestrian or vehicular travel. We've had that at an event where somebody wanted to demonstrate across the door of an event that they wanted to stop. We did not allow that because we had a rule about obstructing pedestrian traffic. Spontaneous demonstrations. We have rules for spontaneous demonstration. And, we're a public institution, so they are permitted unless the demonstration presents an unsafe environment or disruption to the university's operation or academic mission. So there's where we say that this is our policy for all of the time. If you're not disrupting the activities, if you're not blocking a door, if you're not impinging the ability for someone to speak in a classroom and be heard, then you're going to be able to do your demonstration on our campus. And this is covered us pretty well. It gives us the flexibility to negotiate with demonstrators on campus and to also plan for things. So we have scheduling priorities. You might have these where it says the university's essential service comes first. So that means things like open houses can override the need for a student to use that space for a demonstration. Academic needs, again, a classroom. Institutional programs and complementing academic and co-curricular mission. That's where the club and organization events come into place. And then programs and officers sponsored by student organizations, the last one. Co-curricular ones are things from the classroom, obviously. So that's our priority. And sometimes we will move people out of the way or to a different location, again, based on time, space, and manner restrictions, because someone already has this space reserved, or you're too loud, you're impacting the event, which has reserved that space. So as a general concept at Stockton, and I tell my students this all the time, the more you plan, the more rights you have on campus. The business of the university and the academic classroom activities will take priority over other activities. So what does that mean? It means if you're a student organization who wants to demonstrate on campus and you plan that out, you might get more things like a podium and a sound system and all of those things. We have a DART team. That's our demonstration action response team. We will help attend. We will make sure that everybody's First Amendment rights are protected. We will have on-site roles. We'll give you a badge that says, I'm a speaker for this event. So we do a lot of those things. When it's unplanned events, our DART team kind of like sends out an email. Hey, crazy demonstration happening on campus. Everyone, if you can make it to the quad today at 1, please show up. So just trying to say that, the more you plan, the more you can do on campus and the more protection of First Amendment rights that will happen. So how do schools get in trouble? I mentioned that FIRE likes to send out messages and lawyers and letters and threaten schools for lawsuit when they do bad things. Well, what are the bad things that they're trying to do? It's not bad things. They're usually trying to protect something. They're trying to protect the school from bad press. We've seen this in the past where administrators have removed student newspapers with stories of sexual assaults, right before an open house or a homecoming. Or they try and protect the students. The students come to them and say, those words hurt me, or you can't do that, or, we should have excuse me for a moment, a sniff here. We should have a, hate speech program where we're not allowed to say nasty things. Well, or sometimes we can't have that kind of club. Clubs that in the past have advocated for things like marijuana use or changing of laws. There have been universities that have stood in the way of those organizations. And that's if they're only speaking those things and not actually doing those things, which might be against the law in this moment at your state, depending on where your state is. It's okay to talk about it. It's just not okay to do it. So restricting that kind of club could actually restrict their First Amendment. And then sometimes it's like they're just too restrictive in time, place, and manner. I don't like that group, so I'm going to put them way on the other side of campus. Or please move to the free speech zone. Or we already have someone speaking today, so you can't speak either. Yeah, so this is the kind of things: disapproving clubs, free speech zones, hate speech codes, canceling controversial speakers. This is where some schools can get into trouble. And we want to try and make sure all of our ducks are in a row before we do any of these things. Which is crazy. We would never do this, right, Joe? For those who don't know, Joe Leslie used to work at this campus. And we got word that there were some people who were going to show up at a board of trustees meeting. And they were going to make some noise about some sexual assaults on campus. And I walked in the room and I said, what the heck is that? And they said, oh, that's the demonstration area. I'm like, well, there's 500 chairs over there. Why wouldn't they sit there? Well, we're going to tell them to move here. No, you're not. If they are students, if they are members of this community and you let members of the community sit there, you have to let members of the community sit there when they're demonstrators. So anybody have any crazy religious people who come to your campus? Shake crazy signs? I know our friends at Rowan deal with this because it's the same group. If they're going to show up, this group shows up and actually requests to be safe and to be put in a place where they can be seen but protected. That's why they stand on the grass behind the wall, because we negotiated with them where they want to be. So there's a great statement from, those of you who are not in student activities, it's from University of Wisconsin versus Southworth, which protects the student rights on campus and funding. There's a part of the discussion from that Supreme Court case that says the function of a liberal arts university is to promote the free marketplace of ideas. A large number and variety of student-funded organizations contribute to the intellectual diversity on campus. And this should be your calling card when you're looking at, should we have this speech? More speech is better. A variety of student speech is better. This is just some of the things that has happened on our campus that has caused concern and maybe some debate on campus. The flat earthers are fun. If you ever get them on campus, always put them next to your geology club like we did one time by accident. But the debates will be great. So the important thing is that it's a balance. As a university administrator, you need to balance the goals of the university and the goals of the people who are trying to speak. Okay. One person's rights cannot infringe on another person's rights. I cannot yell in your face so loud that you can't be heard. Okay. I cannot block someone from going or seeing a speech that they want to see. It's my right to make my voice heard, but it is not my right to overpower your voice. And the business of the university must continue. So what does this mean when they want to sit in the president's office? Well, if the president can still have their meetings, there might be some debate about whether they can or can't be there. Unless you have a policy that says in the president's office, you need to have an appointment. This is the balance. Can we have the business of the university and still make this speech heard? In the board of trustee thing that I said earlier, we actually, the president of the university invited them to sit on the floor in the front row and said, hold your signs as much as you want. And when we get to public comment, we're going to let you talk. We're going to give you time. And he did. And that was a great way to deal with that organization because they weren't disruptive. They didn't need to be removed from the meeting just because they were holding a sign. So there's a great link that's NASPA.org, Responding to Campus Protest, a practitioner's resource. We're all NASPA members. Joe, you could probably drop that in the comments there. There's also another one from that's just where it is, where it's the legal links where it's placed. So I want to just make sure everyone has that. There's a great Oliver Wendell Holmes comment that is, the right to swing my fist ends where another man's nose begins. And that is where we say that this balance must come from. And the university has a nose too. So there it is. We're going to keep moving forward, but let me talk a little bit about a DART team. If you don't have a demonstration response team on your campus, run out, make one, email me, I'll email you my stuff. It's been really good for our campus. We do have an activist student body and faculty, and we get visits from off campus. And it's just been a great way for our campus to make sure everybody is playing by the same rules. So what is a DART team? A demonstration action response team are a group of student affairs and public safety professionals who get called upon to help plan or work on our student demonstrations or rallies or protests or other events on campus. We train, I'm the co-chair, we train our DART team members in crowd management and de-escalation techniques and First Amendment rights and campus regulations and all of these things. And we have these trainings together with our public safety people and our legal staff, and just to make sure that we're all on the same page. Because when the student demonstration goes by, the last thing my chief of police wants to do is have a uniformed officer go tell that student to be quiet or to move to the left. So it is so much better to have a group of trained individuals who are not police, who can, help when that heat is rising. And that's really what we're trying to worry about. We want the debate, but when it starts to get really hot, we want to kind of cool it off. And that's what we do as a DART team. So we've kind of divided the job here. The police are to stand by and protect the safety. If anyone breaks a law, we can get them to address a legal issue. But like I said, they don't want to talk to a student and tell them to, take a step back. And also in these times when we're full of, activist student body talking about policing of Black and brown communities, politically, they may not want to be there that closely. It may actually provoke things. So it's a lot easier when our police know that the DART team is there and they can kind of hang back. The DART team also negotiates and plans with the demonstrations. I mentioned our religious group. They request safety, so we tell them, hey, if we put you behind this wall, we can keep you safe. And they like that. We also will negotiate with any counter demonstrations and really just strike the balance between the demonstrator needs and the campus and community needs. And have the debates before they get there about, we have an open house today. We have 27 tours. Do we really want them on the steps today, or maybe we move them over there today? And find a place where the demonstrators get what they need and the university gets what they need. And the other one is de-escalate and educate. I didn't have that really on this slide, but the amount of education that we do as a DART team with our students, when they're walking by and they're like, Jeff, why are they allowed to do this? Well, the First Amendment. And I can give them a quick 3-sentence reason about why we're not throwing them off campus, even though they're saying vile, lewd things. Not lewd we might have step in, but they say things that the students don't like. Unpopular speech is what we call it around here. So that's a really important part of the DART team's role. So these are just the training specifics, campus for safety protocols, campus de-escalation techniques. De-escalation techniques are great. That's a great thing that we talk about with our police officers. How can we get that person, identify that person who is the hottest, who is, balling up their fists, who is maybe ready to throw a punch, get them to kind of relax and breathe. One of the greatest things that we did is our student senate has learned that the best de-escalation technique is to convince the students to go away. When there isn't an audience, demonstrations don't do a whole lot. So, like I said, all of those specific training things, if anybody needs help or say, hey, I would love to see what you're doing with that, email me, I can get it to you. And one of the other things that we do during our training is we really talk about like what's happening and what are our comfort levels. Okay. Free expression is great. That's the big circle, right? Everything is expressive activity. Some things are political, some things are concerning, and some things are disruptive. And we all need to be on the same page before that demonstration is happening about how much disruption are we okay with. Are we okay with some shouting? Sure. Are we okay with some shouting if they're 10 feet apart? Okay. Are we okay with shouting if they're nose to nose? Probably not. So are we okay with loud things that are on this side of the campus center versus this side of the campus center? Because the other side is near the classrooms. So where are we going to, everything is expressive. Some of it is disruptive. Make sure everyone on your campus agrees with those things, because the last thing you want is someone to say, hey, can I do this? And you say yes. And then someone else says, no, you can't. So we need to make sure that everyone on the campus has the same, at least a conversation about what the comfort level is. And I mentioned our our president allowing those people those demonstrating students to basically take a front row at a board of trustee meeting and hold your signs, and then we're going to give you the microphone. That was a very relaxed comfort level of hearing what might not be going well on campus. Hopefully you all share that. I was super pleased with my president on that day. There we go. How do we minimize disruption but allow speech that is disturbing? That's what the question is. We're going to talk really quickly about the heckler's veto. The heckler's veto is something you probably know about, but maybe haven't heard the word. Heckler's veto is a situation where a speaker's message is so unpopular that there's events triggered that result in the speaker being silenced. Okay. A student group says they're going to tear up a place because they don't like that group, that speaker. A student group has decided that they're going to disrupt a college professor who is teaching an unpopular topic, or did not teach well, or did not handle a situation well. We've seen this at Ivy Leagues. We've seen this in a lot of places where free speech is strong. People get canceled. This campus culture that is happening right now on both sides of the political spectrum is a useful tool in the disruptor's handbook. And we want to make sure in a legal sense that the speaker's right is not restricted by the government by the reacting party's behavior. Okay? If we cancel a speaker that reserved a room because the student reaction was so negative, that speaker's First Amendment rights has been violated and you could catch a lawsuit. All right. There's a great Vox article that I have here where there's no First Amendment right to speak on college campus. It's an alarmist article. It is basically saying there's no more free speech on college campus because these things happen. I beg to differ. I think if we're doing a good job at our jobs, we're going to make sure that we have plenty of free speech. But you can all check that out. Oh, and there's my little funny meme. So courts have ruled against government groups that allow the heckler's veto. Here's a famous case from 1992 that kind of said it, but also Brown versus Louisiana and Fenier versus New York. The interesting one for those of us that run campus centers or run student groups or run campus groups is the Forsyth County versus Georgia versus Nationalist Movement. They actually violated the First Amendment right by charging different fees based on topic. Like, oh, I'm sorry, your group is going to be dangerous, so you need extra police. So we're going to, because your speech is unpopular and because that there's going to be a counter protest, you need to pay more money for your permit. And that was found to be unconstitutional and a breaking of their First Amendment rights. So if you have fee structures for your student groups or your renters based on how much police coverage they need or barriers or things like that, because you think that they're going to be disruptive, but they actually haven't been disruptive, or it's the counter protest that is disruptive, you actually can't charge those fees. Deep topic, everybody. And this isn't just a campus problem, and we know that there is more political violence, and the marketplace of ideas right now is not a good place to be. But just know that our theory is that physical might of the advocates or force to silence a speaker is never the reason that you should be shutting down a speaker. Okay, the answer is more speech, not less speech. So back to the original question. Here is the thing that I'm suggesting that we all talk about, which is DART teams. Here are some of the things that we do in our DART team to maintain a safe environment, balance the rights of freedom of expression, limit disruptions, make sure the educational and operational needs of the university are protected. Okay, that should be everybody's goal on this webinar. Every campus professional, anybody who has anything to do with safety, maintain a safe environment. It's first for a reason. Balance the rights and freedom of expression, limit the disruptions to the educational and operational needs of the university. Now, if you have a DART team and you're super cool, you can assist with the logistics and the planning of the demonstration, rally, protest, or whatever to make sure it fits all of those goals, okay? And then we are all educators. No matter what you do on campus, you are an educator. So educate the event coordinators, the participants, and the attendees about the parameters of the freedom of expression and campus regulations, because the students are going to ask, why are they allowed to say that? If you're not ready to answer, you miss an educational opportunity. If you are campus police, you need to work closely with your student affairs professionals. If you're a student affairs professional, you need to work with your campus police to make sure on site, on the moment, during that demonstration or rally, that you have the tools needed, whether it be barriers or bullhorns or caution tape or a map of where they're walking. Make sure you know what's going on. Ensure marketing and relations is informed about the events. They're going to get parent phone calls. You're going to have alumni phone calls. The student newspaper or the outside news might show up. So you need to make sure that your marketing relations people are informed and ready to give out a statement from the university. And you need to work closely with the student community who choose to protest on your campus. Make sure that they are telling you that they see you as friendly, that you know what's going to happen before it happens, because, again, the more you plan, the more rights you can have. We also serve as an advisory capacity before and during the demonstration. So a lot of times, a chief of police will come to me and say, "Hey, Jeff, help us out here." Are they allowed to do that? Are they allowed to stand there? Are they trampling something where they're not supposed to be? And it's always better if it happens on the side, outside the view of the people and the demonstrators, because if you have a decision in the heat of the moment, in the middle of the yelling, it's going to be probably not the right decision. We also do post-event reports for future planning. We have maps with little stars on it about where people can demonstrate and where we like people to be and where our most free spaces and our less free space. We keep routes of all of our marches on campus so that we know where we can close and where we can't close. So future planning is probably the most important thing. Get a team together, train them, plan for the future, have a discussion about what you're comfortable with before it happens. And most importantly, make sure that you're talking to the student demonstrators on campus and they see you as a friendly body. And I think that's it. Here are some references. I will email this or post this wherever we can. Joe, do we have a place to post this, or are you taking emails from everyone?
I just posted your email,
That's great.
and your information, so in the chat, so they
Yeah,
can
I will
definitely
send
contact
this
you.
to everyone. This is not secret information. None of this is trademarked. If you want to steal my slides or read my citations, please do. Specifically, if you're in student activities, that first one, that Board of Regents versus University of Wisconsin, the fire.org, this Cohen versus California and Miller versus California, very important. You don't need to know the words. You don't need to remember the citations of the actual court cases, but just know what it means. If you've never heard of the Tinker Standard or Fraser Standard, that's completely okay. But just know that debate on the First Amendment and free speech on colleges and high schools and every government owned school in the world has been debated before, and there's probably some case law around what you're talking about. So I guess I will unshare and we can move to the, just make sure I'm at the last one. Yep. And then we can move to the, oh, sorry, I clicked one of my links. Stop sharing. There we go. And we can move to question and answer. I'm freely open for any kind of questions. Joe, I don't know if there's anything else you need to cover.
No, I mean, if anyone has any questions they'd like to share, they can unmute if they'd like. Dennis, you can go. We got a
Oh,
question in the
yep, I
chat.
saw one in the chat there. Thank you, David. David asks, can you speak please about where the line between free speech and extortion when students threaten to sue people at the college if they don't get where they want? Yeah, well, this is a very difficult one. So it's been pretty clear that a threat to sue without an actual lawsuit is pretty protected, um, especially at a public university. A lot of times, harassment lawsuits is a whole other category that I'm probably not equipped to answer, not being a lawyer. But we have been we've been told by our university council that anytime anyone suggests a threat to a lawsuit or I'm going to sue, that we immediately send them to our university council and basically stop talking to that person. So I don't think there is a threat to sue, because to fit the threat standard, it must be physical and bodily harm. or to break a law. So you can't threaten to break a window or break your nose, but you can threaten to do something that is legally protected. Hope that helps, David. And I do see a hand up, Dennis. Oh, I believe you're muted, Dennis.
No, it still looks like you're muted. You're unmuted through WebEx, but maybe your mic's not hooked up or something. Yeah.
And if you want to type it, Dennis, we can read it. I'll read it out loud.
I think Todd might have a question too.
Yeah, just was curious for you all at Stockton, or other folks that you have these teams implemented. Can you just share some of the folks for your campuses that are on that DART team from the student affairs side? If it's specific positions, offices, who makes up the DART team or DART? I guess I'm saying team twice technically.
Our DART team has a lot of student affairs people, like the student activities people who know the clubs and organizations. Our campus police, when we started the DART team, was wanted to make sure our DART team was really focused on student organizations. He has since rethought that and asks us to respond to some non-student organizations. So we now say, like, when students are involved. So a lot of us are student activities, campus center folks, residence life folks. We have a couple of faculty members on it. And then we have the campus police officers, like lieutenants and sergeants and things, also come to our DART team. But they're not really members of the DART team because they end up serving the other roles. So yeah, I mean, everything from, we need to make sure that on that DART team is also people who give support in case there's some triggering language. So our women's center and our counseling staff are also well represented on our DART team.
And I was going to add, so Rowan has a similar setup. We kind of have two different groups. We have a more of a response side and more of a organizing support side. As for, like, as Jeff said, the more planning, the better for those internal events. But yeah, it's made up of a similar composition. We have our wellness, DEI representatives, folks that know how to deal with students, but also conflict. So that res life side of things, like originally when our group was created, and it was only, I guess, 2019. It was a lot of senior level administrators, and they'll be there anyway, but they have other things they're working on. So they're dealing with public relations, or they're involved. We really wanted those boots on the ground staff that can work with our students and kind of guide them and support them throughout the process.
That's perfect. Thank y'all so much.
Yeah. And I can read Dennis's question here. Let me finish answering this one. It looks like the link does not actually have the report for the NASPA report. I think you have to log in and request a copy. I apologize for that. But anyway, Dennis asks, our legal counsel has informed us that the campus at large is a limited public forum. And outside speakers must get permission or be sponsored by a student or other group to speak or demonstrate on campus. Of course, public spaces on the periphery of campus are traditionally public forums. Your legal counsel is probably more comfortable defending himself in a lawsuit than ours is. And that really becomes, debatable. If you are allowing student groups to use those public spaces like quads and things on campus, you might catch a lawsuit if you don't use an outside group use those spaces. If you are making sure that every internal group is following those same guidelines, then you have a much stronger leg to stand on. Again, I'm not a lawyer. Contact your local general counsel or personal lawyer for that. But one of the lawsuits that I know has happened, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the case law at the moment, but you know, if someone can show that other groups are getting space spontaneously, they can get spaces spontaneously. So if you allow a student group to reserve a space, but you only allow student groups to reserve a space, then that outside group cannot reserve a space, which is something that we do on this campus. To reserve a room, you must be connected to the university. But our outdoor spaces we do consider them public forums, especially our spaces where the students will use as public forums. And the faculty, we have a unionized faculty here at Stockton, and they will demonstrate frequently. So if we're letting the faculty use it, if we're letting the students use it, you're probably going to need to let the public use it. Again, at a public university. Private universities, totally different areas. Thank you, Dennis. I hope that answered.
Any other questions? Okay, it might be it. But thank you very much, Jeff. Always appreciate you sharing and your time with everyone. But if there's nothing else, if you are NASPA members, please feel free to sign up for the Knowledge Community for Campus Safety and Violence Prevention. You do not have to attend meetings. You don't have to engage, but you would get sent updates throughout when there's opportunities for webinars or workshops. If you are someone who attends the national conference, we sponsor various sessions. I just was going through and looking and improving them and reviewing them, several sessions for the conference. So please get involved as little or as much as you'd like. But thank you once again, and everyone else, enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
And before we log off, I just want to thank Joe for posting a better link for the responding to campus protests. Turns out there's a volume 1 issue 2, and I was linking the old one, I believe. So.
Okay, thank you, everyone.